Hello, welcome to the last Perspectives talk of this academic years. Thank you for joining, people. Today we have Shruthi Veena Vishwanath with us, who is a singer, curator, educator, songwriter, and is going to perform some of her poetry for us. And the talk is titled OG Rebels, Poems in Song and Translation. So she's going to recount some of how mystic and Sufi poets have used poetry and songs in order to dismantle some of the hegemonies and hierarchies of caste and gender. This meeting will be recorded, and we will have a 15-minute Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat. And before any further ado, we'll have Shruthi go ahead.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Okay? Yeah? All right. The ant flew into the sky. The ant flew into the sky and she swallowed the sun. What a surprise! The barren woman gave birth to a child. A scorpion burrows into the underworld, and the snake lord of the underworld bows his head down to its feet. A fly transforms into a hawk. A fly transforms into a hawk. Muktabai watched. Muktabai laughed. An ant flew into the sky and swallowed the sun. मुंगी उडाली आकाशी तिने गिळले सूर्याशी. थोर नवलाव जाहला वांझे पुत्र प्रसवला. What a surprise, a barren woman gave birth to a child. A scorpion burrows into the underworld, and the snake lord of the underworld bows his head down to its feet. A little fly transforms into a hawk. A little fly transforms into a hawk. Muktabai watches, Muktabai laughs. Now, Muktabai was a poet in 13th century Maharashtra. And the reason I start with Muktabai today is that Muktabai was around your age when she died, actually. So it's very likely that this poem would have been written around the time when she was your age, or perhaps much younger. What does it mean? Who is this fly? Who is this hawk? Who is this scorpion? Who is this ant that swallows the sun? So when I first got to know Bhakti and Sufi poetry, like we hear these words around, and we are like, okay, whatever. Like we hear, maybe our parents listen to some Sufi music, or maybe when you all were growing up, there was a bhajan playing somewhere. Maybe you never really paid attention to it. I didn't, okay, till I really got to know what these poems meant, and I said, oh my god, because within these poems, hidden, unless you really listen to it and unless you see it, is an enormous amount of rebellion, an enormous amount of resilience, an enormous amount of resistance. Which is why I kind of say that these folks, these men and women, these boys and girls, some of them were much younger, from centuries ago, were the OG rebels. There was the kind of thought they have, we might not dare to speak out today. The kind of things they chose to resist, we might be quite afraid today to speak in the same vein. I'll give you another example, and my invitation is if anyone feels like joining on video. I know you all have had a long day. It'll be nice to see some faces, but I totally understand if you don't want to. So Zanabai, who's a poet around the 13th century as well, says this. And I'm going to read the translation and then I shall sing this one for you all. डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, हाती घेईन टाळ खांद्यावरी वीणा, आता मज मना कोण करी, पंढरीच्या पेठे मांडियले पाल, मन गटावर तेल घाला तुम्ही, जनी म्हणे देवा मी झाले येसवा, निघाले रे केशवा घर तुझे. द पदर, द घुंगट, द वेल has slipped onto my shoulder. But I don't care, I'm going to go into the bazaar. Who dares to stop me now? I will have the taal in one hand and the veena in the other. This is the ektara, but you get the idea. आता मज मना कोण करी, अब देखते हैं. Now we'll see who dares to stop me. पंढरीच्या पेठे मांडियले पाल, मन गटावर तेल घाला तुम्ही. In the marketplace of Pandharpur, I will set up my trade. Zani says, pour oil on this mangat. Now, mangat has two meanings. Mangat in colloquial Marathi, the Marathi that's spoken today, means wrist. But the mangat in the 13th century was a casteist slur for somebody of Zanabai's caste. And so she takes it back. She says, ya mangatavar tel ghala tumi. Pour oil on this mangat. Zani mhane deva, mi zhale yesava. Zani says, I have become your whore Keshava. Nighale re Keshava ghar tujhe. I'm coming now to wreck your home. I'm setting out for your home. डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, भर पाल, पंढरीच्या पेठे मांडेले पाल, मन गटावर तेल घाला तुम्ही, मन गटावर तेल घाला तुम्ही, मन गटावर तेल घाला तुम्ही, मन गटावर तेल घाला तुम्ही. जनी म्हणे देवा, जनी म्हणे देवा मी झाले येसवा, जनी म्हणे देवा मी झाले येसवा, निघाले केशवा घर तुझे, निघाले केशवा घर तुझे, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, भरल्या बाजारी जाईन मी, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, डोईचा पदर आला खांद्यावरी, डोईचा पदर. So imagine what courage, what amazing determination, what amazing, astounding rebellion it would take for a Dalit woman in the 13th century. Zanabai was a housemaid. Everyone now in translation says Zanabai the housemaid. That was her profession. She worked as a maid in the house of Namdev, who was um, another rebellious poet, but with more privilege. Imagine what courage it would take for someone like Zanabai to write, I am your whore, and then to say, Keshava, I'm setting out for your home, the very God that people worship, the very God that. Because for her, it didn't matter. There are times when she is deeply in love with Keshava. She's enamored by Vithala, by Keshava, by whatever name she wants to call the God. Once the same uh, God becomes Vithabai, becomes the feminine form, and becomes her Sakhi, becomes her friend. At other times, uh, Vithal is Keshava. At other times, there's one where she swears at Vithal. And she actually swears at him and says, you're completely useless. I don't understand who you are. I don't know what you've done. Imagine being able to write about loving a god and swearing at the god and telling the god, hey, I'm your whore, I'm setting out. Yeah, so this is the kind of expression that when I read, I said, whoa, what is this? Okay, because um, all of these traditions, uh, we tend to deify something when it goes into a book, and when we study it in college and study it as a university course or whatever, or when we study it in a temple or in a dargah, then it becomes, Sant Kabir ne kya bola, you know Sant Zanabai ne kya bola. The moment we put the word Sant over there, or Ustad over there, or try and give them that big label, then at some level I feel like we fail to see that they actually didn't want any of those titles. They wanted a direct connection. The next poem I'll sort of share with you is by a poet called Shah Hussain. Now, Shah Hussein's story is very interesting. Shah Hussain was born in Lahore, and he again didn't want the system. He rejected the system, and he said, I don't belong to anyone. Don't give me any titles. Don't give me anything. I am Fakir Nimana. I am the Fakir who belongs to nobody. I am the Fakir who owns nothing. I am the Fakir Nimana. And Shah Hussain, when he had a whole number of students, and one of his students was Madholal, was a Brahmin boy, a Hindu Brahmin boy named Madholal. And the two actually fell in love. Shah Hussain and Madholal fell so deeply in love that Shah Hussain took Madholal's name. He became Madholal Hussain. Madholal Hussain, and he used to sign as Fakir Nimana. And he wrote also in many, many verses as Madholal. To this day, uh, the two are buried side by side next to each other. The graves of Madholal and Shah Hussain are next to each other. And there's a huge urs, a celebration, a festival that happens every year. In end of March, actually. I think it was on the 31st of March or something like that this year. Can you imagine for a love story like this to be celebrated from the 17th century right up to this day? In fact, the only time it seems to kind of be a little bit under threat is now, because suddenly they've stopped allowing women at the urs. And unfortunately, I don't think it'll be too long before people start questioning I hope that these stories survive, which is why we need to share them, which is why we need to share these beautiful love stories, these beautiful poems from across centuries, because I think they have a lot of power and a lot of truth in them. What was the idea? Why were they so rebellious? I think they didn't want to see any barriers between people. They said, okay, everyone is, you and I are equal. That was the primary premise of all of this. So, where do I come in this with my music? I got tremendously excited by all of this because I was looking for some music that spoke to me. I actually studied in the Carnatic classical music tradition, and at some point I didn't know why I was singing what I was singing. I said, but I didn't connect to the lyrics. I connected deeply to the music, but I didn't connect to the lyrics. I said, hey, I don't want to sing about how beautiful this God is. That's not really what I want to do. Or I don't want to sing about these themes that are typically sung in either Carnatic or Hindustani classical music. I said I was looking for something deeper, and I saw these poems. So this particular one in Man Atkeya Beparwa De Naal, uh, it's sung by the great Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Saab, and it's a wonderful, wonderful poem where he again, where Shah Hussain questions. He says, "Kazi Mulla Matti Dende, Khare Siyane Rah Dasende." Judges and clerics, the Qazis and Mullahs, are full of advice. But Khare Siyane Rah Dasende, Ishq ki lage Rah de Naal. But the righteous and wise will show the path because love itself needs no guidance. Ishq, love, doesn't need any guidance. So people will talk, somebody will try and tell you what is the right thing, but true love, ishq, really needs no guidance. And so when you have, yeah, I'm going to just sing that verse, and yeah, then we'll talk a little more. Kazi Mulla Matti Dende, Kazi Mulla Matti Dende, Khare Siyane Rah Dasende, Khare Siyane Rah Dasende, Ishq ki lage raah de naal man atkya, beparwah 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 de naal us din duni darsha de naal man atkya, beparwah de naal man atkya, beparwah de naal. कहे हुसैन फकीर निमाना, कहे हुसैन फकीर निमाना, सच्चे साहिब नू मैं जाना, सच्चे साहिब नू मैं जाना, ओडक कम अल्लाह दे नाल मन अटकिया, बेपरवाह 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 दे नाल है उस दिन दुनी दशा दे नाल, है उस दिन दुनी दशा दे नाल मन अटकिया, बेपरवाह 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 दे नाल. Why chant the Vedas? Why chant the Vedas? Why perform sacrifices? Why study the law books every day? Why know the 6 Vedanga texts. All this is in vain if you don't love the Lord. Says Appar. Appar is a 7th century poet from Tamil Nadu. A 7th century poet, part of let me part of the Nayanars, one of the 63 Nayanars, and a 7th century poet. Now, if you go into a temple in Tamil Nadu now, you might actually see some of the statues of these of the Nayanars, of the Alvars. You might see them in temples. What that immediate imagery won't tell you is what they actually wrote and how they questioned the very system that they questioned the system. It wasn't that they weren't they resisted categorization. They questioned the fact that everyone didn't have access. They questioned externalities. Kabir says a similar thing in one. He says, "Latko chhod de re, ए जी म्हारा असल फकीरी जाग." लटको छोड़ दे रे असल फकीरी जाग. In another one he says, कहाँ से आया कहाँ जाओगे, खबर करो अपने तन की. काजी बैठा कुरान बाचे, जमी जोड़ वो करी चटकी. हरदम साहिब नहीं पहचाना, पकड़ा मुर्गी ले पटकी. बाहर बैठा ध्यान लगावे. He makes fun of both the priests and the mullahs and says that they're all looking at the externalities, and outside they're meditating, outside they're reading the holy books, and then inside they're doing other things with so just be aware, he says. And when translated, you're like, oh my goodness, is this what Kabir actually wrote? And yes, it's actually what Kabir wrote. Kabir was an iconoclast. He was somebody who resisted the system. He was somebody who made fun of people. He was like, ha 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 you, ha me. There's a story of Kabir where I think everyone was making fun of the prostitute in Banaras. So Kabir, it is said that he kind of had a few drinks, and then he came, and hand in hand with the prostitute, he walked around the streets of Banaras. And then when people made fun of him, people tried to make fun of him, then they saw, oh my God, it's Kabir, we can't say anything. And then he said, yeah, see, she's also a human being, I'm also a human being, so don't say anything. And that was that. So his rebellion was intense, was very intense. It was things that we would think twice before doing it. But for him, I think he saw no duality. It wasn't that he was trying to do anything spectacular, because there wasn't any Insta, there wasn't any Facebook. It wasn't like he was doing it for the likes. If anything, he kind of knew that people would fight over it, and his reputation might go for a toss. So he wasn't looking for momentary fame. I think what he was actually doing was a deep expression of, hey, we're all one. We human beings are one. So why you stuck in your gender or your caste or your religious boxes? Step outside, look at the truth. I think this idea of the truth, and you might hear things like Nirguni music or Nirguni parampara, and there are even people who say, but Kabir is the greatest poet. Kabir is ultimate, and now there's a lot of Kabir festivals around, so you might hear people saying Kabir, and Kabir has actually there's a rock band singing Kabir. It's called they call Neeraj Arya's Kabir Cafe. A lot of people also sing Kabir. So a lot of people will tell you about Kabir, but with Kabir was this entire ecosystem, this entire gang of people, this entire group of people who actually spanned centuries. It's not like, oh, it was just in Banaras or just in Maharashtra. Actually, they've stretched from Tamil Nadu right up to Kashmir, from Bengal right up to Punjab, and even further west. In fact, the movement, kind of the Sufi reign of thought and sort of protesting against rules that people make, which are silly, which don't make sense, or boxes that people construct which are narrow and blinkered. This thought goes right up till Yunus Emre in the 13th century in Turkey, and east in Bangladesh with all of the fakirs. And when you actually begin to read it, then you're like, hey, there's something here, because I think when we look at rebellion and resistance, and that's kind of why I wanted to share this. Very often we're like, okay, whatever, we bring in whatever, we listen to rap, say, or we listen to K-pop because it's cool. What we don't realize is some of those kinds of thinkers have been in this land also for centuries. We just need to look a little deeper. And I think Kabir and Zanabai and all would have totally approved of Blackpink and BTS, because they were actually with the times. Now when we look at their imagery and iconography, we're like, okay, whatever, we won't give it a second glance now, because it'll look like some religious imagery or some something that our parents might listen to. But actually what we don't realize is how relevant it is uh, for all of us, today, in these times, especially in these times. So, yeah, I mean, I think a closer look at some of these would be in order. And the other thing is, who were these guys and girls, these men and women? Who were they? It's not like they were from some, you know princely palace, or some from Harvard University or CPT or something. They could have been. There were people who were extremely learned and from the best learning institutions of those times, etc., etc. But there were also ordinary men and women. There were potters and nurses. In fact, in the Vachna movement, H.S. Shiva Prakash, in his book I Keep Vigil of the Rudras, says that more than 50% of the Vachanakaras came from artisan classes, came from professions of labor. They were farmers, they were milkmen. In fact, one of them actually signs as Ambigara Chaudaya, which is Ambika the ferryman. So they were ordinary people doing perfectly ordinary things, and what they were doing is seeing how to express from where they were. So you will see that the potter expresses with metaphors of the pot. The only thing we're taught about Kabir in school, and some of you all will relate to this, we're taught the acha bacha wala metaphors. Okay, so we're taught Guru Gobind do khade to kiske lagu paye, Balihari Gurudev aapki to Govind diyo bataye. We're told that if the Guru and the Govind stand in one place, whose feet do you fall at first? No, obviously you will fall at the Guru's feet first, because yeah. And I think schools have a hidden agenda. They have to make you respect the teachers, which is a great thing. But what they don't tell you is that Kabir was a rebel. So they will not tell you that he says माला जपू न कर जपू और मुख से कहूँ न राम, राम हमारा हमें जपे और हम पायो विश्राम. I'm not going to japo my mala now. I'm going to take a break. Ram will chant my name and I will sleep, because he doesn't see any duality. It's not like he's trying to be this or that. So even Guru Gobind do khade is great, but I think we should learn both Guru Gobind do khade or Mati kahe kumbhar se, and we should learn Mala japu na kar japu, because it's so cool. It's so cool to know that people have question these things, that I think all of us question at some point. All of us wonder, hey, like whatever, we speak to our parents, we interact with them, we see what they're up to, and we're like, what, their path is okay, maybe I don't want to do that. But these people have said that you can totally question it. It is totally legitimate. It's totally cool. You should totally do that. So it is, if there's kind of one thing that you take back from today, actually there's two things. I'd say whenever you're confronted with a piece of art or a piece of writing, I'd say see if you can find some nuance in it. See if you can dig a little deeper. See if you can see one layer extra that the person next to you may not see. Like read it once, or immerse in it once, listen to it once properly, and then see if you can find some of these hidden layers and nuances, because they exist everywhere, from Gujarati to Tamil to Kannada to Malayalam to Telugu to Bangla to Kashmiri to Hindi to Malvi to Rajasthani, all of these languages, to Punjabi to Saraiki. All of these languages have texts where where it's not as it seems at first glance. So look deeper, look deeper, and yeah. And I'd say the second thing is give things a shot if you can. Like give it a chance. Give it a chance to in order for us to read deeper, we have to kind of give things a chance. Okay, so I want to leave you all with a song from the Baul tradition, and this one I also I've shared a few of these poems also because I really enjoy them, but it's also I'm aware that it's June and it's Pride Month, and I want to keep that in mind. And of course, we're always trained to look at something like gender as the binary, but in the Baul tradition, there's a poet who we don't know who the poet is. Sometimes these poems are unsigned. He says, "Daine Krishna bae Radha, deho khachaye biraj kore." Yeah. So on the left is Krishna. No, Krishna on the right, on the Radha on the left. I never understand Daina Baina. I'm bad at this D, figuring out where D and B goes. So Krishna on the right, Radha on the left. Both reside within the body. Adhek kalo, adhek shada. Due mile ek roop dhore. Half black and half white, and the two merge to take on a single form. Yeah? And he says, Amar bhitorer ami ja, chinte parle shobhi shoja, deho bhande brahmando khoja, sahaj premer poth dhore. The I within me, once I recognize that, the true I within me, when I go deeper within myself, then everything becomes simple. Because within my body is the whole cosmos. Within my body is the whole cosmos. And how do I find this? I just find it through the path of love. And that's the other thing. Ishq, prem, sahaj prem, simple love. There's nothing... through the path of love, I find this. When I'm true to myself, when I look at things with love, then I find it. Daine Krishna bae Radha, deho khachai biraj kore. Daine Krishna bae Radha, adhek kalo adhek shada, adhek kalo adhek shada, due mile ek roop dhore. Daine Krishna bae Radha, deho khachai biraj kore. Daine Krishna bae Radha. Ei amate যুগলের মাস, নিত্য লীলা করে প্রকাশ, নিত্য চলে আনন্দ রাস, দেহ যমুনা তীরে তীরে। ডাইনে কৃষ্ণ ভাই রাধা, দেহ খাঁচায় বসত করে। ডাইনে কৃষ্ণ আমার ভিতরে আমি যা, চিনতে পারলে সবই সোজা, দেহ ভাণ্ডে ব্রহ্মাণ্ড খোঁজা, দেহ ভাণ্ডে ব্রহ্মাণ্ড খোঁজা, সহজ প্রেমের পথ ধরে। ডাইনে কৃষ্ণ বাই রাধা, দেহ খাঁচায় বিরাজ করে ডাইনে কৃষ্ণ বাঁয়ে রাধা আধেক কালো আধেক সাদা আধেক কালো আধেক সাদা দুয়ে মিলে এক রূপ ধরে ডাইনে কৃষ্ণ বাঁয়ে রাধা দেহ খাঁচায় বিরাজ করে ডাইনে কৃষ্ণ বাঁয়ে রাধা। And Kabir says the same thing. He says, इनका भेद बता मेरे अवधू, टेल मी द डिफरेंस, अच्छी करनी कर ले तो. He says it in a different way. डाली फूल जगत के माही जहाँ देखूँ वहाँ तू का तू. I see you everywhere where I go. Huh. With among the elephants you're an elephant, among the ants you're a little ant, you're the one riding on an elephant, and the elephant that you ride is also you. It's very, it's like you have to wait for a minute and you're like, huh? So you're the elephant, you're the person riding the elephant. Yeah, you're the thief, he says. चोरों के संग चोरी करता, बदमाशों में भेड़ो थू, or all of the people who are creating the trouble, you're them. With the thieves, you're a thief. You're the scoundrel. You're the one who robs, and the robber, you're the one who robs. You're the thief, and the one who you are robbing is also you, he says. चोरों के संग चोरी करता, चोरों के संग चोरी करता, बदमाशों में भेड़ो तू, चोरी करके तू भग जावे, पकड़ने वाला तू का तू. दाता के संग दाता बन जा. The one who gives is you. The one who takes, भिखारी में, the beggar is you. मंगतो होकर मांगन लागे, देने वाला तू का तू. You're the one who asks for alms, and the giver of the alms is also you. नर नारी में एक बिराजे, दो दुनिया में दिसे क्यों, बालक होकर रोवन लागे, राखण वाला तू का तू. नर नारी में एक बिराजे, दो दुनिया में दिसे क्यों, बालक होकर रोवन लागे, राखण वाला तू का तू. इनका भेद बता मेरे अवधू, अच्छी करनी कर ले तू, डाली फूल जगत के माही, जा देखू वा तू का तू. डाली फूल जगत के माही, जा देखू वा तू का तू. ए जल थल जीव में तू ही बिराजे, जहाँ देखू वा तू का तू. कहे कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, गुरु मिला है जीव का त्यू. So he says, in the spirit in man and woman is one, but of course the world chooses to call them two. As a child you start to cry, but the keeper, Rakhanwala, is you. In water, in earth, in life, you're present. Wherever I look, I see just you. Says Kabir, listen, listen. Your teacher is the one in you. So he says, when he says, so coming back to the Guru Gobind Do Khade, it's not like when of course they teach it to us in schools, it's about one teacher who's standing in front. But this guy is saying the Guru is you. And that was actually how they flipped the entire system on their heads, because they didn't want, they didn't believe in any outside Guru. He said, no, I'm my own teacher. If I truly look at myself, if I truly look within me, if I truly look at who I am, then I'll find my Guru inside. I don't need to look anywhere outside for my Guru. And that is a philosophy that has stayed with me in my music. So some of the music that you heard today is things that I've learned from other people, but where the music isn't there. Some of these poems just exist in translations. There are some fabulous books that if you all want, you all can refer to. There's something called Eating God, which is a book on Bhakti and Sufi poetry edited by Arundhati Subramaniam, and it's full of translations. There are a lot of Penguin publications with some of these translations as well. There's an entire series of the Murti Classical Library that's now coming out with different Sufi and Bhakti texts. And sometimes people have sung it, but at times when it's being too scandalous or too iconoclastic, or when people think that by singing it, I don't know what people will say, then they have just existed in print. And that's when I take it out. So Doitsa Padar by Zanabai. I haven't found any other version that's sung, and so it was part of my project with to revive it and bring it back onto the stage. So I've composed a lot of abhangs, a lot of Kabir, a lot uh, of these Sufi poems. The one I have a dear friend who has done an extensive work on Fakir Nimana, because again, Shah Hussain is not as easily sung, because sometimes um, I feel that these poems hold a mirror to ourselves, and there are times when all of us will perhaps become a little uncomfortable. We might become uncomfortable looking at this, because it really confronts everything that we've been taught, everything that we've been told since we were brought into this world, because it rebels against the system in very, very strong ways. So yeah, that's what I'd like to leave you all with. If you all can find something that you can perhaps make your own in your practice, in whatever big or small way, as you go out into the world, and give things a chance, and see if you can find a deeper meaning, rather than just looking at things at the surface level, because there's always one level further that you can dig and find out, and then it gets better as you continue to dig and question. It actually gets better, although it might be boring and might need a little work, and no, I don't want homework, but it really gets exciting. That's when the good stuff comes, when you dig a little deeper. All right, that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shruti. I think all of the rebels and the queer people and the non-majoritarian people in the audience today found a little comfort from that. Um, so we will move on to our questions first, immediately now. We have a couple already. Students, please keep them coming. You don't have to direct message me, but that's also fine. So one of the students is asking, when translating works with the emotional and societal context that the poems may have, are there problems with words which have changed in usage with time to the point that it distorts the original message? How do you solve this?
I think that's a brilliant question. Yes, I mean, one is English itself is a very limiting language, because it's a completely different basis. But one must try. In fact, which is why, sort of, before I kind of answer that question, uh, there's a new translation project at the Ashoka University where they're translating between Indian languages, rather than, because we've always been kind of taught to use English as the intermediary, but what if we can directly translate from one vernacular language to another? I think that there would be so much beauty in that, because some of the nuance would be retained. And of course, it's language is the moment we try and bind words like this and say this is what it means. Sometimes we also lose the energy space of the words. I think the words communicate at different levels. One is at a, all of these poems, very often they were sung. They were not things that people wrote. They were things that people expressed, or things that people sang, because all of these poets weren't necessarily literate in they perhaps couldn't read or write. So the moment you lock something into words, that itself is problematic. But when you kind of sit with the text long enough, and really kind of explore what perhaps might have been. So to give you an example, so Doitsa Padar, which I recited for you all, Man gatawa tel ghala tumi. Before that, it has been translated by at least 4 or 5 translators, and Mangat has been translated as wrist, because that is what everyone who knows Marathi right now will look at Mangat and say, hey, wrist, okay, done. So, simple. Zanabai, she's asking Vitthal to pour oil on her head. It must be some kind of ritual, because then she says, Zani mhane deva mi zhale ge seva. Now, the translator whose translations I got inspired by, her name is Jackie Dawes, and she's basically British. She grew up in India for a bit and spent some years in Pune, and so wanted to work on this many years later. And I think it started because she didn't actually remember what Mangat meant. So she researched. She said, "What is Mangat?" And she actually opened old dictionaries and looked. And that's when she stumbled on it. And I think it's totally. I think it's a jackpot because it completely flips it. Um, it completely flips it on its head. Also, there are so many times where the nuance of the language, when you kind of realize that things are said tongue in cheek. It's not, you don't have to take it literally. So how does one translate those things? How does one translate sarcasm? How does one translate complete wickedness? Like which these poems have. I think when we're alive. To where these poets came from, where these rebels came from, and we know that they were coming from a place of deep rebellion and deep spirituality at the same time. Um, then we're like, okay, then you begin to find language for it, and may not necessarily be the thing. And I don't think a translation is ever the thing. I think one must acknowledge that there is room for it. I hope some of y'all go about in your lives, and I hope that somebody does translations 30 years later or 40 years later, when we have, or even 2 years later, when we have a better understanding of these things, when we're alive to the social context of these things. So I think it comes from looking at things from a 360-degree perspective, rather than what does one word mean and the other word mean and one equals one. I think that is the danger. When you look at it in its entirety, then there's chances that it really we really can do justice to it. And there will also be people who don't agree, and I think that's a good thing, because I think if we all agreed and said, "Oh, this is perfect," I think you know it's okay to disagree and say, I don't think that Mangat meant this, I meant that. And I think there's always room for that as well, to disagree with a translation and give it your own spin, because of the context that you've grown up with.
Thank you. We have a student who wants to unmute herself and speak. So we'll allow that. Sadhvi, can you please come on? Sadhvi, we can't hear you.
No.
Yep.
So I had been urging myself to think of a question, but I am not able to. I just need to share something with you. I am a lot into art, as in I have learned classical music. I write poems, and my playlist is like full of Sufi music, classical music. I just sit by myself and love that feeling, and ends up with most of the times my friends be like, what all time do you listen to classical music and all? But uh actually I'm a bit overwhelmed right now.
It's okay.
This session of yours had like a big impact on me, which I don't think I'll be able to articulate right away. It'll take me some time to absorb all of that. So sometime back, I had started reading this book called The 40 Rules of Love, which you probably would know is about Sufism, right? And I told you I'm already a lot into this concept. But somewhere midway, I stopped reading it suddenly. Like, I didn't feel like reading any further. I don't know why. I love Sufism, I love all of that, but I don't know, something. Uh, probably I felt like I know all of this. I don't know, something, but I just kept the book and then didn't feel motivated to read it. And I was feeling bad about it, that I love Sufism a lot. This is my vibe. Like my friends also say, like, this is Sadhvi vibe. Then what just happened all of a sudden? And today your session was like that sign for me. And I'm just too keen to just go and get back to that book now. Uh, just just wanted to tell that to you. It had a great impact, and just in love with whatever you said. And thank you. Yeah, thank you for this.
Thank you, Sadhvi. That means so much. I should tell you that I have like this huge shelf of unread books of translations, and also you also give me some inspiration to go and again read. Very often, just reading doesn't cut it for me. I have to immerse in it in a different way. But I'm so glad. I hope you end up finishing that book if that's what's meant to be. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And if and when you find the words to share, and if ever you might want to share, you can get in touch with me. You can let your teachers know, and your professors will put you in touch with me. I'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much for that, Sadhvi. We have Samyukta as well, who is saying your fluency in different languages is truly extraordinary. How did you start learning these languages, and was it difficult? P.S. You sing amazingly.
Thank you. Is that Samyukta you said? Samyukta. Thanks, Samyukta. So I've grown up multilingual, like perhaps some of us in this room. So I grew up learning. Hi, Samyukta. Good to put a face to the name. So I kind of grew up with Kannada, Marathi, Tamil around me, in addition to Hindi and English. And then, as a lot of the other languages, Bangla I've learned more recently because I just fell in love with the land and the music and some of the themes in the poetry. Punjabi is again something that I'm singing, although I don't understand it. I try and get the individual words right. Very often these songs help, like just knowing that you want to learn this song and this is a badass song, so I want to learn to sing it. Very often is like a great entry point into the language. So I end up singing Turkish as well. So the Yunus Emre. So, but I have no idea, sometimes what it is. But I worked hard on the pronunciation. I've been learning also. So it's a little bit of you want to do it, and then some hard work, and then yeah, sometimes you find the right people to guide you, and then it all comes together. It's a little bit of luck and a little bit of wanting to do it and pushing through. So yeah, but thank you for that comment.
We have one more question. And Vidush is asking, how does singing as an art form change how a narrative is told? Does the rate of transfer of information affect the details and metaphors that a written poem may be able to achieve? I would just like to add a little bit of my own question to it. How does poetry change when it is in print versus when you put it on stage?
Two super important questions. Sorry, I have a very short goldfish memory. So can you just repeat Vidyut's question? Is it
Vidush. So
Vidush?
he's asking, how does singing as an art form change how a narrative is told?
So very often I feel like you can sing things easier because sometimes and you can get across really strong messages that otherwise might be uncomfortable for people. I think when it's cloaked in music, sometimes it reaches easier, which is why the main caretakers of Kabir today are the singers of Kabir in the communities in Malwa. There's my teacher, for instance, Prahlad Singh Tipania ji, who has he's shot to worldwide acclaim now, but there's also hundreds of troops across Malwa who sing these poems, and most of them are from Dalit communities, and they're singing this. They're singing about singing this anti-caste message, this questioning message, and people are dancing to it. Very often, there's a song that you reminded me that he sings. By I forget who the poetess is. I think Sahejo Bai, and she says, "Don't drink and don't." It's basically she says, "Don't get trapped in these external things," and so he sings this in villages, and people dance to it, and somewhere I feel like the message is internalized. There was some I think there was a program where an ex burglar came to him and said, "Oh, when you sang चोरों के संग चोरी करता, बदमाशों में भेड़ो तू, चोरी करके तू भग जावे, पकड़ने वाला तू का तू." I realized that the cop was no different from me, and I gave it up. So you have these miracle stories also that are really interesting. But I think music really. Uh, I think the other thing that music does is it reaches here first, and then you kind of think of it like whatever. When you listen to your first K-pop band, you weren't necessarily thinking. There was a visceral reaction, there was an emotional reaction, and I think that really helps in internalizing it, and that kind of relates to the other question of how does it how is it on print versus how is it sung. And all of these traditions are actually oral traditions. They're sung, they are celebrated, they're danced to, they're sung in community. When it's in print, it this kind of a fixed structure about it. It's beautiful because very often it's because of this print, it's because of some 18th century person decided to compile a whole bunch of abhangs, or somebody decided at some point that Kabir had to be written down, that we have all of these things today. But it's important to know that this is just a start. I think this is the beej, this is the seed, and as long as we know that it's a seed and it needs to go out there and be celebrated and be shared with everyone, I think then we're in a good space. And as long as we don't, it's not like, oh, but this book has said it like this, so it has to be like this. And as long as we say that, oh, maybe we can look at it and question it and debate about this and bring it to life and bring it alive in our bodies and our voices. In fact, I would love it if all of you all learn to sing one of these songs, because it really, the experience is really when you listen to it live and when you start singing it yourself. That's when it truly transforms you, is what I feel.
That was our last question. Thank you so much, Shruthi, for joining us today and for giving us this wonderful experience that clearly left a lot of us speechless and just processing the feelings that we got through it. I will thank our Dean, Samir Shah, our Program Chair, Kat, and the entire CFP team for their support. Thanks always to Dhruvika and Diana for organizing and managing the logistics of these sessions, and to all our students today for showing such lovely engagement. And thank you for joining us for our last perspectives. We hope you have a lovely evening ahead. Thank you, folks. I'll switch off the recording now and we may head off. Thank you. Thank you, Shruthi.
All right, thank you. Just in case somebody wants to hang out and ask another question, I'm around.
Absolutely.
And I see some messages that have come through, so thank you. I'm going to take some time to savor it and read it. But yeah, if anyone does want to hang out very often or just chat, you're most welcome. Is it dinner time yet on campus? Is everyone going for dinner? Is that
I think another half an hour before that happens.
Okay. All right, I think that's it then. So I will see you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shruthi. It was lovely. Thank you.